from a bunker in beautiful Parkchester, the Bronx, it's Electoral Dysfunction. Now, here's your host, Tom Brennan.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Electoral Dysfunction, the show where comedians and experts debate the news of the week from the safety of their quarantine. I am your host, Tom Brennan. Thank you for being with us for another week. We hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving weekend. We got a big show today. Shannon DeVito's here, Kate Moran is here, Andrew Kindler's here, and Robert George, and the rest. Oh man, unnecessary. He's the best. Before we get to that, though, our old pal James Heskey has a wonderful new web series called The Depressed Chef. You can find it on his YouTube channel, James Heskey. Like and subscribe. New recipes and episodes weekly. And we have a special sneak peek of it for you right now. So Ned Thorne, wipe us to The Depressed Chef.
A good chimichurri sauce is like a smile at a social gathering. Executed properly, no one will figure out how messed up things are beneath it.
James Heskey is the Depressed Chef.
I need parsley, garlic, a couple lemons, salt, pepper, crushed red pepper, and there's supposed to be olive oil here, but I forgot to put it in the shop because I'm a moron unworthy of love. All right, now I just have to very carefully rip the parsley leaves off the stems. Don't want to get any stems at all. And you know what? It doesn't really matter. I'm sure some stems are fine. And now I'm just chopping it up as finely as possible. And it takes a little while, but gives me time to think about every single mistake I've ever made. And squeeze a couple lemons in there, which helps me find every little nick and cut and scratch on my hand. And let me get 3 or 4 cloves of garlic from my jar o' garlic here. And then I like to grate that in, because I'm pretty good at this motion here, and don't need to get into it. But salt, pepper, and then red pepper flakes, because eating spicy foods is the only way I can feel anything nowadays. Now I'm going to drown all my ingredients in olive oil. Lucky ingredients. And that's it. Now, you might want to make an entree at this point. The sauce goes great on steak, chicken, fish, or veggies. But I only set out to cook one thing today. And I did it. And I feel pretty good about that. I still want to try it, though, so I'll just put it on this Hot Pocket. That's got to be good, right? The full recipe is down below in the description. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I don't know, maybe it'll give me a serotonin release if you do. I'll try anything at this point.
And welcome back to Electoral Dysfunction, and join me in welcoming this week's panel. First up, really excited to have her here. She's a wonderful comedian. You know her from Hulu's Difficult People. Shannon DeVito's here. Hey, Shannon, how are you?
Hi, I'm here.
That counts as like a silver medal on the positive statements you can make in 2020.
Gosh. Well, I usually assume that I win bronze, so a silver is like way ahead of the game.
It's look, you gotta, everything's to scale in 2020. That's the way I look at it. My rules, like all of our accomplishments in this year should be viewed as much bigger, and we all get to put our birthdays from this year off to next year. That's my rule.
Great.
Also, you're welcome, America. Also joining us, she's the host of the Revolution Comedy Podcast. Kate Moran's back. Hey, Kate, how are you?
Hi. I'm excited to be here on the other side of the election. This is my first time since we found out.
Yeah. Now things are we're all 100% certain that Joe Biden will be president on January 20th now.
Are we?
Yeah, I still somehow have like a very heavy pain in my heart still, but I'm assuming that'll go away on its own.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the end of the movie Brazil. I'll save that for, again, our other podcasts.
No spoilers.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no spoilers for a movie that came out in 1985. Also with us, a very funny comedian, urban survivalist, and Eagle Scout himself, Andrew Kindler is here. Hey, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you for saving the best for third.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
That is how we do it here. The top two every year. And finally, Bloomberg Opinion's own. There he is, hovering over Robert's shoulder, the man himself, Robert George. Hey, Robert, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well, Tom. I will say, Kate, are we really sure this is after the election? Because there's some doubts, and the Republicans are still kind of working the timeline out themselves. So let's give them a little bit of time, and we'll let's see. About a month from now, we'll get a little bit of a clearer picture as to whether we're really post-election or not.
Right. That's good.
Great, thanks, Robert.
That's terrifying. Thank you.
Robert, I was really
Missed
hoping
you.
that you were about to like pull one of those like never. I've seen all like a lot of the never Trump Republicans on TV. Like you can see them start to slide back now that Trump's out. And I was hoping this would be like your heel turn, where you'd be like, "Well, I don't know that Biden won the election. We're still waiting to hear all the facts." I'd be like,
well, no, I can't quite go that far. I mean, you heard some of my pessimistic observations. So when I say things like, "Are we really sure that we're after the election yet?" I'm not saying that that Biden didn't win. I'm just saying that Trump hasn't quite lost yet.
Fair enough.
Oh, gosh.
No, with that, Sonny,
He's losing every day. It's great. It's like
that's true. It's
Christmas.
It is.
Well,
Yeah.
He's losing it every day, Andrew. That does not necessarily mean that he's losing every day. There's a slight distinction there.
Yeah, as a friend of mine from high school, Rachel Cole said, it's like Hanukkah, but for Trump losing the state of Georgia for the last month or so. Anyway, so let's move from the cheery subject of will Trump actually ever lose the election to the even cheerier subject of COVID-19. This week, it seems not just this week, it seems like for the last few weeks, we've almost broken records every day in terms of hospitalizations, in terms of deaths. Health experts are predicting that by the end of the year, we should be close to 400,000 deaths from COVID-19. Like it's fair to say almost like the entire country is right now where a lot of like the northeastern cities, particularly New York, were, months and months ago. ICU beds are filling up. Spread is not under control. President-elect Joe Biden has committed to keeping Dr. Anthony Fauci on as like a chief medical expert for his administration. He will call once he is signed in, call on all Americans to wear masks for the first 100 days. He's going to mandate it in federal buildings. And talks of a COVID stimulus have come back to life in the Senate. But meanwhile, the president of the United States, who as of this conversation is still Donald John Trump, has said nothing really about COVID since he took credit for the vaccines, which I won't give him credit for the vaccines, but if he wants that credit as like a getting out of our way thing, I'll give it to him. That's my stance on things.
Why are we making a big deal out of this? The whole thing went away around Easter, like he said. The whole thing just magically went away with the warm weather. So
yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
And then went away again after the election.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we were actually going to just completely we were just going to completely stop talking about it right the day after the election. I mean, not just Donald Trump, but I mean that noted epidemiological expert Ted Cruz said, guarantee it, put it, mark it down right here, the day after the election. We won't be talking about this anymore. So I don't know where you got this fantasy, Tom, that COVID is still a deal. That's just like that liberal Parkchester
that's true. Yes.
world view of yours. So
here in the liberal Bronx,
as it says right behind Kate, everything is fine. I mean, there's nothing going on this way. There's not a big deal.
And to be fair,
speaking of Ted Cruz, with a 9/11's worth of people dying every day from COVID, that guy's masturbating a lot right now.
No.
A lot.
I forgot about that.
Hey, Tom, never forget.
That's true. Sorry. Oh man, I teed that up perfectly. For anyone who may have forgotten the story, I just want to make sure
he's shooting over that grassy knoll like nobody's
boy.
Oh my God, I hate you all so much.
For anyone who may have forgotten the story, someone on Ted Cruz's team, possibly him, possibly whoever runs his Twitter account, clicked like on a porno site on September 11th, I believe 2017 it was, because I remember it happened at like midnight, and it was like all of us who were awake on Twitter at midnight people, like suddenly it was like a mad dash, and then the next morning you could see like the people who are already asleep like whoa, like everyone making their version of the same joke 8 hours later. I hope it was him.
I mean, he is a Zodiac killer. It does fit into his MO.
Yeah, well, let's not shame people for liking pornography, Kate. Okay, let's not assume everyone who likes porn is necessarily a murderer. Because if that's
No, it's not porn. It's just porn with death.
Oh, true. That's true. Porn. That's true. On 9/11,
porn.
I do make a point to
God.
not look at porn on September 11th as part of the rules.
9/11 was an inside porn job. I'm telling you.
God.
Oh, this took a turn.
That was that grassy knoll joke was just A+, and then. All right. So
are you saying that 9/11 porn involves people being united like never mind, I'm not gonna.
All right.
Okay, so I'm gonna pivot hard and say that I think that the state governors really need to, because obviously we're not going to get any kind of federal, assistance in this resurgence, and the state governments really need to, like 2 months ago, have put down strict restrictions. These 10 p.m. curfews are bullshit. They're not going to do anything. Studies have shown that actually schools are less at risk of being spreader events than bars and restaurants. And not to go into the next subject, but pass a fucking stimulus package so that bars and restaurants can close, people can put food on their tables and not have to work because no one wants to work right now. There should be no reason why we are still going out. And I know it's the holidays, but stop killing grannies. Stay at home.
Well, I
want to just quickly highlight. I'm going to quickly highlight, Kate. Good job. Like, this was just a perfect microcosm of the American COVID debate, as we got distracted by something stupid that a Republican did on Twitter and joked about that, and then in comes Kate Moran to be like, "Here's everything we need to do. Shut up." So well done, Robert.
It was just going off. It was just going to get even uglier. So I
respect it. You did a wonderful job. Good work, Robert. Go ahead.
I have to agree with you, Kate. I usually try and pretend that I'm the responsible adult here, but you actually were the one that came in and set people right. I will slightly disagree with you. I actually do. I do think people do want to work. I mean, I think, if they had their druthers, folks that are in the people in the restaurant business, bars, others, places, they want to get back to work. But to the extent that those places become mini super spreaders, there has to be a government response. If those places cannot open safely, you need to prop them up until we've gotten the vaccine spread far enough that they're able to open up. They're able to open up safely. Absolutely, that's absolutely the case. And
and sorry to interrupt. I just think I want to clarify what I meant is that I think absolutely people care about their jobs and their careers and their passions, but from a lot of service workers that I'm friends with and talk to, the restrictions are not in place. People feel very unsafe, and if they were able to have financial assistance so that they could safely stay home, and they also so that their small businesses wouldn't permanently close, I think they'd be more than willing to, be safe and stay home for a couple months. But those are a lot of ifs that are not happening.
Yeah, it may be fair to say people want to work, but they don't want to get sick while they work.
Right.
Is kind of the way to put it, I think. Shannon, go ahead. I thought I interrupted you while you were starting to speak.
Oh no, I just had a question. But do you think that we're at a point of no return? Because I feel like we're so divided. Like, had we at the forefront of this said, these are what we need, this is what we need to do, this is a dangerous thing. But I think at this point, every governor is different or they're just so completely divided. Like, yes, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, we're all agreed, California, that this is like a problem. But like, when you look at so many other states, there's governors who don't think this is an issue. They have people dying and the masses in North Dakota and South Dakota, and those governors are like, fuck it, who go to a bar? And so like, so yes, all of our governors might take a drastic move and do all of that, but then you have all these other governors. So like, do you think that if our governors do something and those don't, do you think that it still, yes, it mitigates it in those, but like, we're not, we can't block off borders and stuff. So like, what do you think that we're past the point of being able to fix this without the vaccine and without drastic measures?
You raise a really great point, and I think seriously speaking, the jury is out on that. It may very well be. We have reached a certain point. That said, the tone that comes from the very top can help influence local behavior. So one of the problems that we've had almost from the start is that even at the very beginning, you had the initial statements coming out from the White House. Even then, it was way minimum from what we really needed. If you remember, it was originally 15 days to stop the spread, 30 days to stop the spread. If the message coming from the top at that point had been saying, well, we're looking at minimum 2 or 3 months of a focus to try and get this under control, that might have had a slightly different outcome. But even with that 15 days or 30 days to stop the spread, the president of the United States, was basically throwing that out the window almost the second that it was down. He was saying, well, yeah, to Andrew's point, it would be great. Let's open up for Easter because rebirth, reunion, and all this other kind of stuff. So almost from the very beginning, you were getting these mixed messages coming out of the White House. One of the good things about having the new president in there is you're going to get a unified message. Now, there's going to be pushback from Ron DeSantis in Florida and Kristi Noem in South Dakota, and many of these other Republican governors. But if the same message is coming from the president, is coming from the CDC, coming from these other agencies, while also we're getting news about how the vaccine distribution is going to be coming, you may get more buy-in from folks on the ground, whether they voted for Joe Biden or not.
But are we too far past the pale at this point? Like, has the well been sullied in terms of adhering to any kind of guidelines or believing that it's even a real virus at this point? Like, there's still a large section of the country who doesn't think it's real or doesn't think it's serious. You get people like Jake Paul out there saying it's like the flu still here in December. And I wonder, all of those, I agree with you, Robert. I think it has to start from the top down, but I worry if we've done so much damage by not having that over the last 9 months, that anything we do is going to be a little futile because too many people have already refused to buy in. And at this point, they've dug their heels in so deep, I don't know if their minds can be changed.
And
oh, go ahead, Rob.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I hate to be negative, but I do feel like because we're also in a race against time that we're already so behind on, had New York, California, Pennsylvania, New Jersey governors instituted strict restrictions at the top of September, the other states might have followed along. Honestly, California is a leader in a lot of kind of state legislature. Look at how many states are now legalizing weed. But that takes time, and we don't have time, unfortunately, with this virus. Had a stimulus package been passed again in the fall by the federal government, we would have maybe not been in this kind of situation where businesses and people needed to work and be open. So I think, unfortunately, we're in the middle of December right now. I don't know how we come back from this at all until a vaccine is available.
One of the we've also had you've had in a kind of sense the worst of all possible worlds, because on the right you've had this basic willful resistance as to the basic facts. Even if they haven't used Trump's language that it's a hoax or things like that, they've minimized it. They've downplayed the numbers. They've just been saying freedom, 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 and allowing super spreaders and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, as we found out, over the last few weeks, even Democrats who take it seriously end up doing like really stupid, stupid things, like having fundraisers and events, like in what is it, the French Laundry in
Or
California.
the mayor of Denver who said everyone should stay home, then hopped on
Oh
a
yeah,
plane
the most.
to, I think, Mississippi or Maryland.
The mayor down, one of the mayors down in one of the Democratic mayors down
Yep.
in Texas, who says, okay, everybody needs to stay home for Thanksgiving, as he's filming this from Cabo. You know, I mean, no, I mean, and this is the
Joke's
thing.
on you. Maybe he lives in Cabo. I don't know Texas laws.
No, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
but it creates it undermines the message. It makes it very easy for the Republicans to say, hey, we're stupid and blowing all this stuff up, but you guys are hypocrites. I mean,
Yeah.
and then so the average person who just wants to just throw up their hands and say, we just want to have we want at least have a semblance of normalcy. And so if I'm going to walk down the street and grab a beer, at this point I just don't really care, because to hell with all of them.
And what's especially frustrating about that is, like, certainly, maybe not every mayor's office is as big as some of our bigger city mayor's offices, but when you look at the footprint that a governor or mayor has to create when traveling, like, the easiest thing it's easier for them than anyone else to stay in their homes. like the logistics they have to go through to go places, whereas like generally all the information they need to do for their jobs can be brought right to them. I think one important question asked though, and I think this goes to Robert's point, I think certainly like the ship sailed in terms of what kind of damage will be done at least between now and January 20th, and then between now and a vaccine on some level. But I think a good point that is worth asking, and one thing I think this election kind of revealed, there are people who are not as emotionally invested in our leaders. I think everyone on this call might share my cynicism for all elected officials, but at least we kind of, the point of comparison that a friend of mine made was, a friend of mine who lives in a redder state. It's your look at it is, the Trump cult won't wear masks because their dear leader told them not to. And he's like, that's certainly true of some Trump voters, but then other Trump voters, it's not because Trump didn't wear a mask, it's because the president didn't wear a mask. And their thought was, if it doesn't matter to the president, it must not be that big of a deal. And my friend's thought was once that president is Joe Biden wearing a mask, he's like, I would bet those people might not vote for him in 2024, but would say, president's wearing a mask, I guess I should wear a mask. It must be a big deal. I think that is an important distinction. But even then, when it comes to fixing this, the projection of what we can fix has to be based off of how bad things are, I think, on January 20th, 2021, than how bad they are in December of 2020.
And they're going to continue to be bad. I think people see the vaccine on the horizon and they think, oh, great, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But these vaccines are going to be coming out in waves because of how they have to produce them. And even I think it was Pfizer said what they initially estimated, it's going to be half of that. And so I think we have to be prepared that as these vaccines are rolled out, we're going to see a lot of slippage because people are going to think that things are back to normal because there's a vaccine out, not realizing that it's still going to take about a year from now before we have any semblance of normalcy.
But should we also shift our message a little bit? Because I think right now, we're all yelling into the void, wear a mask, wear a mask, wear a mask. And yes, that is very important. But I think right now, because we're so far past the point of no return, I'm wondering if our message should start being, the vaccine is going to be good. You need to take it, because only 58% of the country is willing to take this thing right now. And that's not going to give us the immunity that we need. So I'm wondering if yes, I do agree that for the first 100 days of Joe Biden's presidency, wearing a mask is going to be crucial. But I do also think that some of our narrative needs to start being, this vaccine is something that you need to take. It's going to be important. It's not going to have a chip in it from Bill Gates. If it does, whatever, I don't care. I have a cell phone. It's the same thing. So I think that just get it, that narrative needs to get out there a little bit more, because if only 58% of the people are going to get it, that's not going to help us.
I also think, going off that point, that we need to maybe, and part of me really hates to say this, but also shift that idea of ever returning truly back to normalcy. That has been spoken a lot. Dr. Fauci has said that from the beginning. This idea of what is normal might need to really systemically kind of change. This flu, it's essentially a type of flu virus, right? We still have thousands of people who die from, our standard flu every year. This might be something that year after year we have to continually be aware of, monitor, change. We still don't know exactly how this virus incubates versus being transmitted. I had an exposure risk just a few weeks ago. We finally went outside, had an outdoor birthday party with 10 people max, and one person had a positive test. And so we immediately, right before Thanksgiving, so we had to immediately get tested. But I was like, we still can't see anyone, because just because it says not detected doesn't mean that we don't still have it. So we had to quarantine for 2 weeks. The thing is even if Joe Biden starts wearing a mask on January 20th and the whole country's like, oh, the president's wearing a mask, let's all wear a mask, that still doesn't count for the countless amounts of exposure that have already happened over the winter and continuing. I mean, we're looking at, I don't want to say it, but 500,000 people are gonna die very soon. We're rapidly approaching that number. And like you're saying, Shannon, a lot of people are not wanting to get the vaccine. This is going to be something that I think, it's not like we can just finish our math homework and then go outside and play. I think we need to really look at this as a lifestyle change in society.
I would love it. I was going to say, to Shannon's point about it's not going to put a chip from Bill Gates. I would love it. News came out that I think Clinton, Obama, and Bush are going to have, first of all, I don't doubt the sincerity of this at all, but just the way it was phrased, they volunteered to get the vaccine first. I was like, oh, good. How good of them.
Me too. Can I be on that panel? Let's all volunteer to be with them to get the vaccine on live TV. One, I get to be on live TV. Two, I get to hang out with Obama. That's a win-win.
I would love it, though, if they did that and Bush and Obama look at the camera. This won't put a chip in you. We already did that in 2008. It's already in.
And by the way, I tell you, the fact that we all really know that this is actually an Obama-produced Netflix show, Grumpy Old Men Presidents. That's actually what's going to come. This is just a pilot. This is just a pilot. It's going to be.
We'll do it, and then we'll do.
I'm fine with that.
8 more episodes.
I'd watch the crap out of that show.
All three of them are just going to pull out their SNL packets that they've been.
Yeah, everyone on this panel is like, and we also will have our packet ready. So if you'd like to hire us.
And the little, the subplots, the subplots of, Laura, Michelle, and Hillary. What are the boys up to this week? That's gonna be on there.
Oh man! Oh goodness! George and Barack just leaving every time Bill's like, "Let's stay out a few more hours." No, I don't want to see what's going to happen. Anyway, continue.
But to follow up on something that Kate was saying about what normal is going to be looking like on the other side, one of the more interesting non-political stories of this past week was Warner Brothers announcing that all of their movie releases in 2021 are going to be simultaneously going to theaters and also being released on HBO Max. Now, the reactions there were interesting. The other studios are holding their fire right now, but for the movie theaters, this sounds like a potential death knell. And in the short term, it could. But and now let's just say there's obviously corporate interest here. Warner Brothers wants to promote HBO Max to become like a real competitor to Netflix and Disney Plus and stuff like that. And this is one way for them to do that. But it's also matching reality. The movie Tenet, which was supposed to the Christopher Nolan book, the movie which was supposed to be like the big blockbuster, basically died in terms of domestic distribution. Warner has postponed Wonder Woman multiple times, and they're going to finally release it on HBO Max on December 25th. So they have to figure out figure out some way. But it's also a bow to reality that even with the vaccine starting to be distributed, people are going to be just wary about going into movie theaters. It's the same reason why Broadway is not going to be starting up until the summer at the very earliest. So even with the vaccines having a slow rollout, 2021, knock wood, might not be as bad as 2020, but it's certainly not. We're not going to be back to 2019 anytime soon.
Yeah, we hadn't planned to talk about this today, but I'm curious, since Robert brought it up, like, to the panel, do we think that this move from Warner Brothers like kills movie theaters off? I'm curious.
I'm of two minds of it. Being the only member of the panel in Los Angeles.
Can you feel my eye roll from across the country, Andrew?
They call LA
for the eye rolls.
They call LA the Bronx of the West Coast, so I know what you feel.
I'm of two minds of it. It's. I heard the news and I saw the reactions online. I think there's a lot of people who are like, "Yay, this is good," and "Yay, this is bad." And I think it's kind of both. I understand Warner Brothers. They've got to survive. They got to turn out their products however they can. They've produced all this content. It is absolutely going to affect exhibition centers, theaters. There's just no question. Like I wonder if theaters were already in a precarious situation where I don't know if we knew they were going to survive this. The Warner Brothers news is clearly terrifying. I think AMC is already appealing to like the Supreme Court or something. To try to, which is just an insane string of words to put together. But I think
Gorsuch being like, we got to take this up.
I need my movies. Yeah. I think people are going to be very well.
Those art house movies. Can we take a look? Let's take a look at those, please.
I think from a consumer perspective, I think it's going to be very welcomed because people are very hungry for content right now. They're trapped in their homes. And seeing new movies released, it is a sense of normalcy, even if it is at your home. From a business perspective, I think it's going to have an unfortunate reaction. It's going to change the entertainment industry in one way or another in ways that we probably can't even think about right now, things we can't comprehend.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I will say one thing, and maybe because I'm the old cheap bastard on the panel here. Shut up, Tom. Exactly. At least 2 out of those 3 are absolutely true. I'm not sure if I'm willing to now. If you're parents with two or three kids, this is manna from heaven for you because you don't have to haul the kids to the theater. To spend $150 to see the new Trolls movie. You've got it right there on your screen. The kids are all right there. You're not spending goodness knows how much on popcorn and things on things like that. Hey, this is great. This is perfect for you. For me, I'm not sure if I want to spend $20 for a movie that I'm just watching in my own apartment. It's one thing to go outside and say, oh, okay, it's a night out. I'm happy to spend $20 a ticket for big screen and the whole experience. I'm not really willing to do $20 to watch even a first run movie in my own home. That's just me.
Yeah, but isn't this like? I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sharon.
But this is different than that because they're putting this out on their streaming service, which is like a monthly, like $5 a month or whatever. It's like I feel like yes, I agree with you on like the whole Trolls thing that happened in like the earlier pandemic. I don't even know what year this is. No, I do. But I think that the streaming thing is incredibly different because it's basically, I mean, people don't really grasp the concept of like, I paid $10 a month, but I don't feel it. So it's like, it's free for me to watch. But like HBO Max actually is free for many people, especially who have cable, because like I got HBO Max just because I have HBO. So it's like I'm getting all of these movies now for totally free, and that is like I feel like that's a drastic difference, and that is what I think is so scary to movie theaters because like I I don't know. I always had this concept or idea that they would put them out in movie theaters for like a month, and then like after that then they would put them on the services. So like you have this month buffer where you can go experience the film in like these in the theaters and stuff, but then you eventually get it. If you want to just wait, then you can. And like that kind of like buffered both ideas, but like I don't know, there's something so different about this one than like all like just having it offer it on like pay-per-view or whatever.
Yeah, you're right. Shannon, thank you for correcting me. I was in a sense conflating two different things that were going on. Earlier on in the summer, Disney released Mulan, and they had a separate tier for, I guess, Disney Plus or something like that. And so
it's also what they did with a lot of the movies that came out that were starting to come out just as the pandemic hit. Was like they were all up for like $20 rentals.
And they were up for $20 rentals. But you're right. What HBO Max is basically saying is, if you're in
the club.
If you're an HBO Max subscriber, either via HBO or just do it discreetly, those movies will be available to you without an extra charge, which you're absolutely right. That's definitely a real game changer versus the pay-per-view $20 a shot.
Yeah, but I think to your point, Robert, I as a consumer, I didn't pay that $20 or $30 to watch Mulan or Birds of Prey or anything when it came out. I waited till it then became part of the free streaming, part of the included streaming service collection as a consumer. But I think Andrew makes a huge point, and I think this is actually, if we were to take a step back and look at, okay, how long do we project this coronavirus pandemic really affecting us as a society? Is this actually pushing kind of what was already inevitable in media and technology, tripling that speed of involvement from, theatrical release is a huge amount of profit that the studios depend on for making these movies. These incredibly inflated billion-dollar budgets, they plan on making that back and then some through theatrical release. They barely make any money, honestly, through the streaming services. So will this change eventually content? Will we move away from long feature film, celebrity-filled, special effects-filled, content to more shorter content, to short films, to self-user created things? Are we going to, I'm really curious with the effect that this will have on Hollywood and the media overall. Also for television too, knowing that now TV has moved, every single major network now has their own streaming service as well, and are now reclaiming back their shows from Netflix and other kind of streaming services to Peacock or to CBS On Demand or whatever. So we are completely changing, I think, the landscape of what media consumption is in this country. And that is, I think, going to affect all of us.
I think it's really interesting. I think a thing that I think a lot about off that point, Kate, the thing I thought when this was announced was, on the one hand, like, I love going to the movies. I like the movie theater experience. I feel bad that will be hurt. I think movie theaters can evolve, and I think you might see movie theaters try and follow that Alamo Drafthouse model of like making it into a place where it's not just the movies, like you're going to get dinner. And I do think throughout this pandemic and until we're in the clear, it won't be that way, but people do like going places. And if nothing else, so long as there is one parent who needs that kid the hell out of the house and it's cold out, movie theaters will still exist. But
also, let's bring back drive-ins. Let's do drive-ins again. They're so
but
fun.
I was saying,
I think the drive-in
become
hasn't made a bigger comeback.
Well,
I would think it could become like
Joe
a. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you
No,
go
I
ahead,
was going to say, and I didn't mean this as a joke, but Joe Biden, by his campaigning model, is bringing the drive-in, because he's had many of his political events, including the end of the convention, and when Obama was out on the road campaigning for him, were in drive-in or large parking lots kind of areas. And so I think that is, by the way, another way that families, if they don't want to be just stuck inside watching Mulan on the on the 55 or 70-inch screen, if they want to take the kids out. I mean, when I again, Tom, yes, I'm the old guy here. I first saw Star Wars in 1977 at a drive-in with my,
That must have been awesome.
with
That
my,
sounds
with my
awesome.
mom,
Like
dad.
a
No,
Boston
Movie theaters exist back then?
Yes.
no, I told you.
I also think one
They
thing
had to turn it.
Yeah.
You gotta crank it by hand.
Did they bring the
Themselves, yeah.
Brontosaurus rib up to the window?
That's why I had to go with my kids, because they needed my footsteps helping to drive to the car.
A thing I like about the streaming option though is, like, think of all those movies that, like, you see trailers for and you're like, I like to see that, but I don't know if I want to take the time to go to the movies to see that. Like, and then, you know, like, this is a chance for the companies to find out, like, oh, this kind of content, these kinds of stories do have an audience. It's just in a different place, and I think that's an exciting prospect.
You know what else I was thinking?
yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead.
We're like, I have thoughts.
Sure.
When I thought about this too, it's like, it's kind of like when the recording industry was forced into figuring out how to fix itself. Like, not that they've totally bounced back, but I feel like as an artist, it almost is giving us back some power, because we're going to be forced to find different ways for the companies to make money, and it's going to give us back a lot of power, because I think that we're going to be able to produce content that's going to be seen more. Like, I know we do that with YouTube and things like that, but like, because everything is going to be streaming in the way that, like, Napster and those kind of things kind of force the industry to, like, take a step back. I think that this new streaming thing is really going to be like, okay, well, how do we allow independent people to put out content and make money off of it, like in the way that the recording artists do now, and they have concerts on their own, and they have, like, you know, they put albums out on their own websites and make money. So I feel like maybe this is great, knowing that, like, one studio makes all of the money right now. Maybe this is going to allow us to kind of regain that model of diversity a little bit.
It's all going to be branded content.
Well, but like, I didn't even think about that. Like, if you condition people that the movies are at home, then, like, the next step could be, like, if I can't get any company to do my movie, but I can crowdfund it and then just put it up on my website. People are already used to sitting down at home and watching. That's an interesting point.
Yeah, I think one of the big things we're going to see come out of this, to your point earlier, Kate, I was, something on NPR was, they were talking about it last week, about how, like, the pandemic has kind of increased where we were going. Like, everything we were supposed to see in the next 10 years has happened within this year. So I think one of the things we can expect to see is potentially the death of the blockbuster, because without people going to the movie, without people going to the actual.
No, the Blockbuster movie, not the
movie,
Blockbuster
not the Blockbuster
store.
video.
The movies, not Blockbuster
Yeah.
Video.
I'm so sorry. I don't mean to burst your bubble, but
Guys,
I think that
Andrew
went away
doesn't
a
know.
while ago.
No. I'm bringing a movie there just later today.
Yeah.
I think what we might be seeing is the death of the blockbuster, because without movie theaters, that is the main revenue drive for those. The ROI of streaming is just not the same. It's why studios have been so reticent to release everything online. Warner Brothers is obviously doing it because they have to move their product, essentially. But I think, you know, that's obviously a negative. And then a potential positive of it is we might start to see, or we probably will start to see, a return of the mid-tier movie, which has been radically disappearing over the last 20 years. There's now suddenly a market for it, for, you know, those $5 to $10 million movies that they, you know, you get a couple of up-and-comers to do a rom-com or a two-hander buddy comedy. And there's a lot more creative freedom in that. Not every movie that comes out has to be Marvel.
And, like, a big part of why those movies went away is because no one wanted to, people might want to see them, but their movie ticket prices went up. And it's like, what are you going to spend that on? Either something that's like a work of art, or I'm going to see Thanos finally finally take it in the dick.
Marvel didn't realize. Marvel didn't realize when they were, setting up their grand vision, that how appropriately titled Endgame was in 2000. in 2019 because it finished their cycle. I mean, I know we had a Spider-Man movie that came on after it, and so forth, but it basically it finished their cycle, and now we are going into this great era. It's a shame that the first victim of it was on the Marvel side was Black Widow. But that's they're going to have to figure out a completely different way of putting out their next few phases. I mean, they'd already had the Disney Plus Marvel connected movies, in production, and they're going to come out. But now it's looking like those big blockbuster things may end up becoming part and parcel of what Disney Plus is putting out anyway. So.
One last point I will say, and also, I think TV shows like WandaVision will also be a big thing for Disney. I just need to say this as a prediction because I work in branded content, and my partner and I literally will sit down and watch our TikTok regulars, religiously. We will watch our YouTubers that we like as part of our evening television routine. Everything is sponsored. I think that's a big thing we're going to start seeing even more so, is that branded, it's something that's always kind of existed in the digital space, but now, especially with these theaters closing and margins moving, I think we might see a lot more branded content in movies and television.
For us oldsters out there who don't watch who aren't watching TikTok all the time, when you say branded content, does that mean, is there like a sort of an ad at the very beginning saying this is brought to you by XXY, or do they are these things kind of dropped?
It's more sinister. It's more it's a little more sinister than that. It's organically created content that ideally natively works in the product or brand into the content itself. So it is an ad, but it's masked as actual content. So you can watch an entertaining video or read an article that happens to be sponsored and paid for by a brand, but it's not a direct ad about the product.
Like when Community got sponsored by Subway, and every episode had to take place in a Subway at some point.
And if you need, for those of us, to tie it all back to politics, if you want to be terrified of something, just remember, branded content is today's version of General Electric Theater, a weekly show, a weekly anthology show where movies and short stories just were told, but brought to you by the good people at General Electric and hosted by Ronald Reagan. So let's move forward to one more thing. Oh man, we gotta move on. Go ahead. All right, go ahead.
This is to your point. Coming soon to you, in 2021, the Trump show sponsored by the Republican Party, or the Republican Party sponsored by the Trump show. One or the other. I mean,
give OANN some credit.
Yeah. What about Newsmax?
To Kate's point, Donald Trump is in a sense kind of, God help us, blazing a pathway for what branded content is going to be like in the coming years, because he took over the Republican Party and put his own brand on it, and we learned, and then maybe this is a good segue for you, Tom. I don't know.
Perfect, actually. Since the election, Trump and the RNC have basically raised about $210 million or so, basically with the hook to that the election was corrupt and he didn't lose, and this is how he is going to fund his, knock on wood, post presidency in the next few years. And so entertainment may learn from politics the same way politics has learned from entertainment. I'm ready to vote for Disney in 2024. It's a more popular band than Trump. That kind of transitions well, because, ladies and gentlemen, it's pardon season, and soon to be Donald John Trump pardoned Michael Flynn, General Michael Flynn, this week. Flynn, who only committed a very tiny crime of lying to the federal government about whether or not he was working for a foreign government. Which generally you want your generals to answer that question honestly. I don't know much about the military, but that seems to me like an important thing for a general to answer honestly. Leading to a conversation about the pardon powers of Donald Trump. In case you're wondering who else he's pardoned in his time, Roger Stone got a pardon. That sheriff guy from Arizona whose name I can never remember, Joe Arpaio.
Joe Arpaio.
Joe Arpaio. So a lot of good guys. And this has led to a conversation about who he's going to pardon for the rest of the year. There are rumblings that he could preemptively pardon all of his kids, or they only named his adult kids, but then only named Don Jr., Ivanka, and Eric, which I'm like, what did Tiffany do? And
she knows what
Rudy Giuliani could get a pardon. And this led to me do a little deep dive reading on presidential pardons. Did you know that no one actually quite knows just how broad the power of a presidential pardon is? It seems generally like pretty much all far reaching. The only thing that is in question is whether or not a president can pardon himself. And that's not even a decided fact. There are some people who believe he can't, some people who can't. It's never been tried. So no one actually.
It's gonna be.
It probably is, yes.
It's gonna be tried.
Gerald Ford, of course,
100%.
pardoned Richard Nixon, but he pardoned him for anything he may have done between January 20th, 1969, and when he left office. So you don't have to know a president does not have to know if a crime has been committed to pardon someone. And that is to me, that's just a fascinating, like, I don't care who the president is. It seems like a bit much in terms of power.
I agree. Even if it's used for good, I think, why do we even have that as a thing? Like one person can decide that someone cannot be held federally accountable for crimes.
Yeah. Like constitutions I'm comfortable with, pardons I'm iffy on, So
the founders the founders thought that it was a big debate amongst the founders, and
like Alexander Hamilton.
Hamilton. But
thank you for saying that, Kate. Though, because now I can put Hamilton in the tags on this on YouTube, which will help our search engine optimization. Go ahead, Robert.
There you go. But it was ultimately determined because there was one section of the king thought that it was too close to the powers that a king has, but the others thought that it was that the power of eminent mercy was something that was not a bad thing to have that entrusted into a president. And there have been, obviously, through our 230 some years as a republic, there have been controversial pardons. Ford's pardoning of Nixon was certainly controversial, and I think going back, I think Ford's heart was in the right place. Though, I mean, looking back, people thought at the time, and people still think, that it probably cost Ford his presidency, because
it probably it arguably
totally
cost.
Did.
Like, I think I agree with you, Robert. I'm a big fan of the Ford presidency. Not a fan of what he accomplished necessarily, but I find it to be one of the most interesting periods of time where this guy who was not elected by anyone, but by all accounts, even though like politically, I think was not where I was, by all accounts, was a pretty honest and decent guy who was just trying to run the ship, became president almost
after years of chaos. Yeah,
and after years of chaos, anything that's interesting is like a big. A biography of him came out a few years ago. I forget the name of the journalist, but it came out because he basically accidentally let slip to the journalist that there had been conversations about him pardoning Nixon, and he didn't want it to look like he was being promised the presidency in exchange for a pardon. So he agreed that he would just let this guy interview him whenever. It's like he gave him basically exclusive access to everything he was thinking under the rules of, and you won't publish it until I'm dead. But I do think that
Cool.
Ford's reasoning was the country had to move on. Like Nixon had already been punished. He lost the presidency in the most disgraceful way. The country had to move on.
Prison
But
also is like a
also,
thing.
what's
But
that?
go on. Yeah.
Well,
So
yeah,
there's
no,
also like prison.
I think he meant that. I guess what I'm saying. I think he was sincere in that belief. I think, and this goes both ways, I do think that by doing that, it gave more power to the presidency than it deserves. And like, I think Bill Clinton arguably committed impeachable offenses and basically got off scot-free under a precedent that we've set that like, well, presidents are gonna do some shady stuff that we've been dealing with ever since.
I think one of the problems we have, and this may very well, and I can understand why Joe Biden would not be thrilled with this, but I think it would be very interesting if, as a signal of trying to restore some accountability. Right now, you've got this gray area. Number one, it's unclear as to whether a president can pardon himself. Meanwhile, you've got a DOJ finding. It's just a rule from the DOJ that an incumbent president cannot be indicted. So if you have somebody like a Donald Trump who has been very clear that he will stretch the bounds of propriety to the breaking point, you have a situation where the Justice Department, again, and this goes back to a finding from the DOJ going back to Nixon. So the DOJ says you can't indict a sitting president, but if a Donald Trump decides, well, a president can then pardon himself, you basically have a situation where it becomes absolutely impossible for the federal government to hold a president / former president accountable for any possible crimes that he committed, that he or she in the future committed while they were in while they were in office. So I think if Joe Biden has already said that if whoever he appoints as AG, it's their, it's up to them to make determinations as to whether to prosecute anybody within the Trump administration. However, if he says, as his personal opinion, that the Justice Department should review this issue as to whether a sitting president can be indicted, even though he realizes that could well apply to him first and foremost, I think that would actually be an interesting statement on his part to say, I'm willing to start putting accountability back into the White House.
Yeah, maybe don't be corrupt, and then you don't have to worry about being indicted. I'm sorry, I thought this was a democracy. Like, this just makes me want to go, like, chop everyone's heads off like the French Revolution. Like, why do we even have a president? Let's just have a cabinet, a House, and a Senate, and we just vote for these people in. To me, this is so ridiculous that this is even a power.
Right.
Yeah, I think one of the more interesting aspects of it is the pardon only works at the federal level, which means the states can still go after anyone they want for any crimes that they committed. Yeah. I think it's
within their jurisdiction.
Yes. Yeah. You can't have like North Dakota go after someone for something that happened in New York. It's crazy. So I think in the event that there is a self-pardon, I think, that doesn't mean he's not still going to be attacked by New York State, where most of his crimes.
Yeah.
And he's under investigation here already. He's under investigation
both at the city and state level.
Right.
And his kids.
The Manhattan DA Cy Vance is investigating him for charges that are connected with his payoffs to Stormy Daniels, which is one of the reasons why Vance wants access to Trump's tax returns. That's going on. Meanwhile, Tish James, the Attorney General in New York State, is also investigating the Trump. The Trump Corporation, I believe, for things related to both charitable contributions.
Fraudulent charitable contributions. Yeah.
Exactly. And separately,
These people are the worst.
And separately, the district attorney for Washington D.C. Is also investigating the inaugural committee, which is one reason why Ivanka Trump was subpoenaed this past week, and I think had to sit down with the DA down there for 5 hours. So yeah.
And she complained about all 5 hours as if
like,
because they're setting up the not the precedent, but they're basically setting up the assertion that this is just a partisan witch hunt, and that's why the president is within his rights to pardon them proactively, which of course is, as Kate said, absurd.
What I loved about her complaining about the 5 hours is like, because of all the things you had to do that day, like, like you're Ivanka Trump, you literally have no responsibilities. Anyway,
I say however we get them, let's get them. Let's Al Capone this shit, and obviously, we're gonna have to figure a way.
I think we should just all ready ourselves for, because it's I'll call it now. Like, he's absolutely going to try to pardon all the people we mentioned, his kids, Rudy Giuliani, and he's absolutely going to try to self-pardon. And we're going to really see that whether or not that can happen. I can't imagine a situation where he doesn't at least attempt to self-pardon.
I could see him screwing over Rudy Giuliani.
I was going to say, I would love it if he, it's like some Game of Thrones to just leave Rudy fucking, hanging.
I could see him at like 11:59 a.m. on January 20th being like, "Oh no!
Oh, I forgot. Sorry, Rudy."
Shannon, thoughts on what I'm sure we'll be calling in a few months' time, Pardongate.
Pardongate. Yeah, I mean, whatever he said, I think that, what we've learned over the past 3-4 years is that Trump will do anything for more power, and wielding the pardon is just the ultimate power, and that makes him very warm in discussing places. So I think that he is going to do it. Yeah, I said it.
I love you, Shannon.
Listen, here's the thing.
You're my favorite person.
I'm not saying that one of the ways that we should prosecute the Trump children is put them in a cage with a tiger. However, I'm also not saying that.
Sure.
Those pictures of Donald Trump Jr. with a cheetah around his head have haunted me for years, and I would like some redemption for that. So if the New York DOJ wants any input onto what their crime, how to prosecute them for their crimes, I have some thoughts.
I'm loving the image of Andrew Cuomo getting a new budget with tigers to sign up.
I mean, listen,
Justice Tigers.
If anyone can do it.
Oh my God! Making a reality show.
The House just voted to make it illegal for people to own big cats. They gotta go somewhere.
The Senate passed it
too. Bring them here.
Yeah.
I think it's about time. I think it's about time. We have some more focus on the tigers, because we're all tired of the lion.
Woo! That was nice. You put that one home. I'm proud of you. I like that
I have
one.
to go. I'm sorry.
You killed Kate Moran. I think one thing, I know moral victories are kind of meaningless nowadays in the Trump era. I will say there's an important thing to note when people talk about pardons, and this is to go back to Ford. Something that Gerald Ford used to justify to him the pardon of Nixon is that a pardon is not, now you're innocent. A pardon, if you accept a pardon, it is considered an admission of guilt. And so, I know that's, take that for what it's worth, but there is part of me that says if Donald Trump pardons himself, that is him admitting to being guilty. And that's better than nothing to me on a heart level. Even if it does nothing.
He'll never actually admit it.
Yeah,
he'll take the pardon, take the pardon and say, but I'm still innocent.
Yeah,
of course.
The interesting thing about this is that if Donald Trump pardons himself, it would then be necessary for, say, the U.S. Attorney General or a U.S. attorney, prospectively speaking, to say we have uncovered wrongdoing within this particular area, and we're going to prosecute now former President Donald Trump. Trump would have to assert as a defense that that he pardoned himself for that particular offense, and so that charge can't be pursued. That's where that issue would end up within the Supreme Court. There would have to be a case of standing where the Attorney General says, "I want to prosecute this." The former president says, "You can't do that," and that's where the Supreme Court would then have to make a decision one way or the other as to whether a president could pardon himself or not.
Oh, good. Well, I trust them. So they're, although I don't know, I feel like I'll tell you one thing I like about our current Supreme Court, which is not much, but I do appreciate that, like, they all do clearly strike me as people who, like, Trump was like, now they owe me one. And they all strike me as people who are going to do whatever the fuck they want.
That's a great by the way, that's a great way to piss off a Supreme Court justice. The idea that said, well, look, this is the thing, you don't understand. You put me in this seat. You put me in this seat for life, and now you're trying to tell me that I owe you forever. Well, F you, brother. F you, buddy. Hey.
I love the idea. I love the image of Neil Gorsuch saying "F you, brother" to Donald Trump. Well, he's at his liquor store church. With that, I think we're going to call it a wrap on this week's Electoral Dysfunction. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, panel. We'll go around quickly. Shannon DeVito, where can folks find you on the internet to get more of your brilliant musings on these times of ours?
I'm all over the internet because I sit at home all day, and so I'm on Twitter at Shannon DeVito, Instagram. All of my things are at Shannon DeVito because I'm very unclever, which means that you should listen to my jokes. I have no idea what's happening, guys. Anyway.
It's okay. I'll tell you this, never bad to have your name be the name of the thing that is your name. Kate Moran, where can folks find you next?
Yeah, on Instagram. I don't really tweet, but if you want to, Kickass KMO is my handle, and you can also follow the podcast Rev Comedy Pod, REV Comedy POD, for the Revolution Comedy Podcast.
Thank you. Andrew Kimmler, where can folks find you next?
Google me. I'm everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm on Twitter at Andy Kimmy, Instagram at Andy.Kimmy. And then, like, I'm all over YouTube.
Great tweets.
Yeah, fucking Google me. There's 3 Andrews, and I've got the best search engine optimization of all of the other 2. So fuck those other 2.
Done.
Nice. Eat it, Kimmlers.
One's a lawyer from Queens, and the other's an MMA fighter who I do not want to piss off.
Yeah, gotta be careful. The other Tom Brennans are the former coach of the Vermont basketball team and my dad, former condo board president of the 392 condominium, who does not like that I have the same name as him because he doesn't want to be on the internet. Robert George, where can folks find you online?
You can find me at Rob George on Twitter. I confess to tweeting a whole lot. Come for the puns, stay for the political commentary, or vice versa. I'm not as prolific on Instagram, but you can find me at RobGeorge29 on because I want to feel young.
29
forever.
years old.
It's exactly
Were
right.
there 28 other Rob Georges on Instagram?
Or were you born in 1929?
Robert P. George has 1 through 28.
Yeah, exactly. And also you can also find some of my musings on B Opinion, which is the Twitter handle for the Bloomberg Opinion folks, and you can find me there, plus a whole lot of other really smart people.
Thank you very much, and thank you again, panel. I'm Tom Brennan. You can find me on Twitter at Brennanator and on Instagram at BrennanatorGram. And real quick thanks, as always, to Declan Shalvey and Jordy Belair for designing the Electoral Dysfunction Eagle. Thank you to Kevin Scott for designing our show animation. Thank you to Joanne Harris for our show theme music. And thank you to Ned Thorne for helping me put these together every single week. Oh, and also thank you, James Heskey, for stopping by earlier. And now, follow him again, James Heskey on YouTube with The Depressed Chef. And now to play us out this week, kicking it over to Brooklyn to our old pal, Mr. David Frazier. Ned Thorne, star white bus to Brooklyn.